Many of you probably think all the countries in the Arabian Peninsula are insanely wealthy, right? I mean, this is the region of the world where Qatar, Dubai, and the rest of the oil monarchies are, after all. Nonetheless, right in this region of the planet is a country that is extremely poor, the place with a GDP per capita lower than that of Tanzania or Senegal. The name of this country is Yemen, and it is currently going through a civil war that has lasted for 2 years. And look, it's no small war. In fact, the war in Yemen is the Arabian equivalent to the war in Vietnam. Here we find two of the biggest powers in the Muslim world supporting different sides of the conflict. On the one hand, we have the Yemeni government supported by Saudi Arabia and all their allies, including the United States, and on the other side there are the revolutionaries backed by Iran. And between these two sides there is the Yemeni branch of Daesh, or the so-called Ansar al-Sharia movement. Now, if you've been subscribed to VisualPolitik for a while, you already know that Saudi Arabia has the third best equipped army in the entire world. Plus, they have the support of American drones and the armies of neighboring countries. They have more than 180 state-of-the-art combat jets and 300,000 soldiers armed with the best weapons. On the other side, they have less than half that number of soldiers, and the weapons they are armed with are far from modern. Now, so this seems like a pretty unequal fight, right? Well, in that case, it might surprise you to learn that Saudi Arabia is losing this war.
Saudi Arabia says prepared for ceasefire in Yemen if Houthis agree.
And so now you might wonder, how exactly is this possible? How is it possible to explain why one of the most advanced armies in the world can't beat a bunch of guerrillas? Well, today we're VisualPolitik, we're going to answer that question. But before we get into any of that, let's have a look at the history.
Who is who in Yemen?
The first thing we need to understand is that this is not the first time Yemen has had a civil war. In fact, this is the third one in just 25 years. Yemen is a country divided by both ideology as well as religion. Indeed, before the 1990s, Yemen was split into two different countries. We had South Yemen with a communist government, and then there was North Yemen who had a pro-Saudi government. And the guy you are seeing on the screen now, Ali Abdullah Saleh, who was the president of the North, started ruling over the entire country from its capital, the city of Sana'a. As you can imagine, Saleh is one of those politicians who considers democracy and human rights to be, well, pretty optional. 4 years into his new country's history, and the former southern communist leaders started an uprising against Saleh's government. This war only lasted a few months, and the new government won with the assistance of the Saudis. A decade later, in 2004, Yemen had further anti-government turmoil. This time, the opposition was a rebel group of Shia Muslims. Remember their name because they are important for the war that's going on today. They are called the Houthi rebels. But again, the Saleh government beat down this uprising. In 2011, with the Arab Spring in full swing, the citizens rebelled against Saleh again, but this time Saleh left power with his prime minister, Mansour al-Hadi. This new president found himself in control of a terribly weak government. Further, al-Qaeda were working on destroying the country. And during all of this, well, the protesters, they kept protesting. Now, do you remember those Houthi rebels that we talked about just a moment ago? Well, they came back, but this time they were more powerful and had a lot of support. And this explains why, in 2014, they managed to take over the government. Okay, so now you might be wondering, what did al-Hadi do? Well, he left the capital and moved to the city of Aden in the south of the country to start a provisional government. Now, remember here that Saudi Arabia is a Sunni Muslim country, and, well, who is the biggest enemy of Sunni Muslims? Well, yep, that would be the Shia Muslims. These are exactly the people who have conquered the capital of Yemen. And this explains why the Saudis are so keen on supporting al-Hadi and his provisional government in Aden. Then finally, we also have Daesh, aka Islamic State, in the mix as well, who are, well, an enemy of both sides. Alright, so now we have the Houthi rebels and their supporters. The Houthis are Shia Muslims, and therefore they are friends with Iran. On the other hand, al-Hadi is in Aden and he is supported by the Saudis, and the Saudis will do whatever it takes to ensure that Iranian influence in Yemen is minimized. You probably remember from one of our previous videos that Saudi Arabia and Iran are die-hard enemies. And thus, in 2015, another Yemeni civil war started.
A natural fortress.
When we think about Saudi Arabia, we think of a big desert with clean sand and dunes. Yemen, it's rather different. It is a country full of mountains almost as high as the Rockies in the United States. Some peaks are higher than 3,600 meters. All of this makes it really hard to transport a big army, no matter how well equipped it is. For instance, the Saudis, they utilize a tank model called the M1A1 Abrams. This is sort of like the BMW of tanks. Now, imagine a convoy of these machines crossing a path where they have to travel in single file.
You would just need a few guerrilla warriors with an RPG-7 rocket launcher to destroy an entire battalion. The RPG-7 is a rocket launcher that you can see on video games such as Call of Duty, and it has a market price of around $3,000 US. The M1 Abrams tank, on the other hand, costs around $6 million.
But, well, not only that. As we said at the start of this video, the Saudi coalition has over 180 combat jets and also American drones. But there is a further problem here. In a landscape full of mountains and caves, it really is easy to hide from these drones. Not even the state-of-the-art radars can see in detail what's inside of the caves. And of course, the Houthi warriors, they know the battlefield like the back of their hands, and they know where all the good hiding places are. In many cases, they can travel from one village to another without being exposed to any of the drone radars. They can also hide their weapons inside these caves. But that is still not all. Even though these guerrillas have no Hummers or other modern vehicles, they have something better. They have animals. Oh yes, you heard that right. In those high mountain areas, the most effective way to transport something is by using donkeys or camels. So in other words, the only way of tracking the movements of these guerrilla warriors is by having people behind their lines. Now, we're not exactly talking 007-like spies here, but rather local citizens who are willing to help or soldiers who are close to enemy lines. Alright, so even with these problems, you might still be wondering how the Saudis are getting beaten. The scales seem to still be tipped pretty far in Saudi Arabia's favor.
Wow. A demotivated army?
Now, many of you might think that the political system of a country has nothing to do with the way they organize their army and conduct war. Well, actually, in a country like Saudi Arabia, they are really connected. In an absolute monarchy, like they have in Saudi Arabia, the royal house cannot trust their army. Their main obsession is keeping control over the entire military from the top all the way to the bottom. This is why the decision-making power is slower than in any other army. Let's have a look at a hypothetical example here because it'll illustrate it better. Let's imagine a soldier discovers a machine gun nest that is, say, 300 meters out.
In a Western army, such as the American or British one, that soldier can easily ask for reinforcement by radio. Usually he or she would go alongside with another soldier from the Air Force who can give the exact coordinates to a pilot nearby. In a matter of minutes, a combat jet is bombing the machine gun nest.
Now let's consider the Saudi army. First of all, that soldier would have to tell a sergeant, and that sergeant would have to speak to someone higher up, and by the time that decision has really reached someone who can actually make the decision, it's been longer than an hour. The 60 minutes here are the difference between neutralizing an enemy position and losing a soldier. And the same goes for military training. Most Saudi officials come from the royal houses, and they didn't go through any sort of academic military training. They got their position due to pure nepotism, and this means, well, a distinct lack of knowledge and skills. The same goes for normal soldiers as well. As you probably know, in most of these oil monarchies, most of the native citizens work as civil servants with sky-high salaries. They really don't know anything about discipline or hard work. So let's look at an example. In the video here, you can see that they don't even know how to protect a tank with infantry. And don't forget that inside that tank, it's very difficult to see the outside. This is why a basic principle of war is that you always want to have soldiers walking around the tank so that they can see if something is firing upon it. This really is War 101. Nevertheless, the Saudis missed that class, and this explains why it is so easy to destroy their tanks with such cheap weaponry. Just have a look at this other video. Here you can see how someone gets close enough to a tank to put a bomb on it. On the other hand, surprisingly, the Houthi rebels have a much more Western management system. Small groups can react quickly, and they don't need to go all the way up through the hierarchy. Plus, their motivation is way higher because they don't have the option of just retiring. Arguably, they are defending their home from a foreign army. In summary, the war on Yemen is a really excellent example of how strategy is more important than weaponry, and that an authoritarian system makes for a less efficient army. Sadly, the fact that the Saudis are losing this war doesn't mean they're not killing people. In fact, the opposite is true.
Death toll in Yemen conflict passes 10,000.
Unfortunately, what could have been solved in a peaceful, democratic way has become a war of attrition that will leave a footprint on this country for generations to come. And now the question is, do you think the Saudis can turn the table on this conflict, or are we going to see this conflict last for a long time to come? Please do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd also like to thank Jago Rodriguez for suggesting the topic for this video. Jago is a military expert from Spain. Also, please don't forget to check out the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that are not mine. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We publish brand new videos every Monday and Thursday. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.
And if you want to learn more about politics and hear even more of my lovely voice, you can join us at Reconsider Media. We have a podcast at reconsidermedia.com/podcast. See you there.